So the great story about the world in the next 20 years is going to be the rise of the rest, the rise of the emerging markets. And of course, with economic, trading, and financial power, there comes also political and geopolitical power. The G8, that was the club of the advanced economies that were running international economic policy, became obsolete, and now the body that does international global policy making on economic, financial, and even political affairs is the G20, that is composed by 10 advanced economies and 10 of the systemically important emerging markets, from the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, China, India, to many other emerging markets that are important. So the world has changed, and has changed, in my view, for the better, and having the rise of this emerging market is going to be a positive. It's going to also be a positive, as I'll point out, for advanced economies, because if you have slow economic growth in advanced economies, firms have to look abroad in terms of exports, foreign direct investment, global supply chains, new markets. And this gives an opportunities to firms in Italy, in Europe, in other advanced economies to grow faster, remain competitive, dynamic, and to succeed in this global economy. So I think the rise of emerging market is important. And this rise of emerging market implies significant changes in the demand and supply of goods and services. These emerging markets are industrializing, they are urbanizing, they have high per capita income growth, they have population growth. So they need, for example, a lot of more consumer goods. They need more services of a variety of sorts, healthcare, education, and so on. They need to have and build more homes, residential housing. They're going to build more offices and commercial real estate. Many of them have massive needs for a variety of infrastructures, roads, bridges, ports, railroads, airports, the whole sets of infrastructure, public and private, for the production of goods and services, and massive amounts of infrastructure in spending, commercial real estate, residential, is going to occur in these emerging markets. Those are going to be great opportunities for firms that are in this line of business. Of course, the rise of emerging market means also more demand for natural resources. They're going to need more oil, more energy, more water, more food, more industrial and other types of materials and minerals. So that's going to put maybe pressure upward on commodity prices. But the rise of the rest, or the rise of emerging market, of course, is going to radically change the global economy for the better. It's a win-win for trade, economic, financial, business, foreign direct investment relations between emerging markets and advanced economies. For those firms in advanced economies who can exploit through foreign direct investment, exports, and business services, this rise of the emerging markets. Third positive about the global economy, in my view, is the following one. We know that there are many sectors of the economies in advanced economies that are fragile. Governments are fragile. They have large deficits and debt, like in Europe, but also in the US. And many banks and financial institutions are still fragile because of the global financial crisis in the US, but still in Europe. Many other households in some countries have too much debt and leverage, like in the countries where there was a housing boom and bubble and bust, like in the US, in the UK, in Ireland, in Spain. There is too much even household debt. However, if there is one sector of the economy that has a strong balance sheet and a strong P&L, this is the corporate sector. High-grade corporates, small, medium-sized enterprises, large enterprises in US, in Europe, in other advanced economies, and of course in emerging markets, have a stronger balance sheets. They did not have as much debt to begin with. They reduced their debt. They're undergoing operational restructuring, financial restructuring. They become more efficient, more productive, more being able to produce more with less labor. They become more profitable. Earnings have been surprising on the upside quarter after quarter, and they're sitting right now on trillions of dollars of cash. And therefore, if they do become more confident about the global economic recovery, they do have the financial resources to spend more. More capital spending, more job hiring, more foreign direct investment, more M&A activity, more financial transaction. So if there is one sector of the economy that could be a lever for stronger economic growth, is the private sector, is the private corporate sector. Firms in the manufacturing, in industrial, in services, that could be the sources of stronger economic growth in advanced economies and emerging markets. So the fact that the balance sheets and the P&L of high-grade corporates of various types of enterprises is strong is one of the positives that can lift economic growth over time. Fourth positive about the global economy is that the process of globalization and integration and interdependence of the global economy is still ongoing. Yes, there has been something of a backlash against globalization given the global financial crisis, but let's think of it. There is more international trade in goods. There is today more international trade in services. Services used to be non-tradable, but now the information technology revolution allows many services of various sorts to become tradable. There is more international movement and trade in capital, both financial capital, but more importantly, foreign direct investment. North to south foreign direct investment, but now increasingly south to north or south to south foreign direct investment. Now we're talking about global supply chains, and this integration is occurring. There is more international movement of even labor, even within the Eurozone. People are now moving more often from country to country, so labor migration. And more importantly, there is now more international trade in news, in information, in innovation, in technologies. New technologies can be adopted much faster. Think about the mobile telephony revolution and how it spread then and was adopted in emerging markets. So globalization with us, some people are worried and threatened by globalization, but the reality of the last 60 years has been that countries that join the global economy do well, and countries that stay outside of the global economy, you know, the North Koreas of the world or many examples of isolated autarkic economies, they don't thrive. Of course, to be successful in an integrated global economy, you have to be productive, you have to be efficient, you have to be competitive, you have to invest into your human and physical capital in order to succeed, because it's a more competitive marketplace, but there is no alternative to that. And when you open up to the world, your market is not anymore just your smaller domestic economy. Think about small countries like a Singapore or a Israel or a Hong Kong or a Chile. When you open yourself to the global economy, your market is not the 3, 4, 10 million people who live within your border, but becomes the 7 billion people that live in the world. So you really can scale so much more your economic and business success. So globalization is ongoing. There are threats to globalization. There is a backlash against it, but I think that it's going to continue, and firms and individuals are going to succeed are those who can compete in this global economy, and there is no alternative to it. Having a fortress, shut it down border is not going to lead you to better economic success. It's going to lead you to less economic success. So people have to be open to this global economy. You have to cooperate together to make sure that some of the side effects of globalization that could be negative, like rising inequality and other issues, like regarding environment, sustainability, are taken care of. But I think we live in this interdependent world with trade, financial, economic, migration of labor capital, make us more integrated for the better. The fifth positive trend about the global economy is that in the long run, economic growth depends on two factors. One, of course, is population growth, and there is still a significant amount of population growth, especially in emerging markets, but there is not population growth. If anything, there is demographic aging in Europe, in US, in Japan. So if you are in a country where population is not growing, how can you have sustained economic growth over time? You need productivity growth. In order to get productivity growth, you need technological innovation and change. You have to be more productive and efficient to produce the existing goods and services or improve their quality, but technological innovation and change also implies production of new goods and services. Now, if you look at the global economy, I would say there are many sectors that are going to be driver of that technological innovation. There are existing, of course, sectors in which technology, like information technology, allows you to become more productive, from manufacturing, where there is a third manufacturing revolution, to services that are now becoming IT intensive. As I pointed out, the demand for infrastructure and real estate around the world is going to imply significant also technological innovations, both in goods and services in this particular sector.